Welcome back to the Point with Mick Rich. Got another exciting week. I have to say, things are happening at such a pace right now and have been for the last, I'd say, 4 years. It's an exciting time to be living right here in the United States. And this reminds me back in the 60s when we saw so many things happening. I grew up in the Berkeley area in the 60s, and the music was happening back then, the civil rights, the peace movement, free speech movement, all of those things happening. It was a great time to be alive right now, but also at the same time, there's a lot of turmoil happening in our country and happening right there in Wall Street. Now, that's what I want to talk about, is that what happened this past week and a half ago, is with the people versus hedge fund elites, investors. That's what I call the people versus hedge fund matter. Huge deal. So I want to talk a little bit, and this is a confusing topic when we talk about short selling, long selling, and then how it all ties together. I reached out to a number of people that I knew that are in the investment community. I reached out to my financial advisor, Joe Redmond, and what a great guy. He gave me some pointers, but he said, Mick, you're not going to find a financial analyst to come on your program. They're not going to want to risk their reputation of saying the wrong thing. So guess what, folks? You got me. I've never been concerned about saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. But I am going to tell it to you straight, just the way I see it. And that's what makes this program unique, is that I'm going to call it the way I see it. I may not always call the balls and strikes right, but by God, you know that I'm honest the way I call it. So first of all, when we talk about short selling, and I'm going to have to read this because it gets a little confusing. Short selling is a strategy in which an investor borrows shares of a company with the expectation the price will fall in the future, and they will replace those, quote, borrowed shares with cheaper price shares, and then they pocket the difference. So this, and I talked to Joe before I came down here. I said, Joe, I read him this. He said, sounds technically correct, which I believe it is. And then, but I said, it's kind of like the idea that you go to like the Ford dealer and you make a commitment to buy a Ford F-150. You don't pick it up, but you give them the money. And then you then go and then place a bet, if you want to call it that the price of that same Ford will drop. Then what you do is you take that Ford, take it over to the Ford dealer, and you said, here's the Ford, equally valuable Ford pickup. I want my money back, and then you pocket the difference. Kind of it's a weird thing, but that's kind of what I gathered the way it works. Long selling, which we all know, that you buy a stock and you hold on to it till the price goes up, God willing. And then, I've been there too, where I've bought things and, not done it the way you're supposed to. That is buy high, sell low. Not a good way to make money. Good way to lose money, but not a good way to make money. So the question comes up, is that ethical way, short selling? And the answer is, yeah, but there's a lot of buts involved. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, what I find is remarkable. So the one guy that's out there that is the original and infamous short seller, which is George Soros, and got his start. Well, he is a globalist, meaning no national borders, no national currency, no national laws. It's one world and one United Nations. So Britain joined the European Union, and to help kind of bring this together, England said, we're going to move over and we're going to get rid of the pound, we're going to go with the euro. But Britain had some economic challenges. Then you had Germany, which was the powerhouse. They're dragging Britain through the mud. And again, I'm only paraphrasing. I love the British people. I just want to make that clear, as well as the German. Good people. But I just want to make it clear that that this is kind of what's going on. And so it got to a point in time, and Britain said, this isn't working, we need to exit and get back to the pound, which they did, and they're trying to hold the line on the value of the pound, and they had economic challenges. George Soros got into that, realized that there was a problem here. It didn't match what the value of the pound was for what it was selling for. And believe it or not, that when we talk about currency selling, that's what we talk about. And so what happened was he bet really strong that the pound was going to drop, and it did. It crashed. And there were people beating their chests that the hardworking men and women of Britain suffered dearly over the devaluation of the pound. George Soros walked away with $1.1 billion in a day. Huge. And he took that model and he expanded it. I believe he went to a number of other countries. I think Thailand was one. Thailand would like to get George Soros in their country to get even with him. But this is what he's done. But then you say, well, there's nothing, is that wrong? Is it right? But he gambled on the misery of the people, and he won big on the misery. But the other hand was, did he ever help any of the people that were going through the misery? And the answer was no. Plain and simple. It was about George Soros. And so then what we talk about is he's been manipulated. So he buys short on other countries, and then he undermines them. So what happened with GameStop? Well, what happened where people got in, have been for a while, these hedge funds, which includes George Soros. They go in, they buy a stock short, and then they go on to television, and then they talk about why this company is headed for bankruptcy or into the doldrums or bad news. And then all of a sudden, people hear it on the news. They go, oh my gosh, I better get out before I lose everything. So then they start selling. And all of a sudden, this gamble on the short selling becomes, it's not a gamble at all. They've skewed the market and they've taken advantage of it. What happened with GameStop? Exactly that. Is that these individual stock investors, people like you and I, got involved and started buying up GameStop because they saw what was happening. And next thing, these hedge funds realized they were gambling on the stock going down and it was going up. And these guys were out billions. Now, that's all fine and good. But here's where it's not fine and good. That all along, the people of Britain took it in the shorts, plain and simple. These other companies and the shareholders were victims of manipulation of their stock. So when the hedge funds are starting to get it, they're starting to pay their dues finally of manipulating the stocks. And what happens? Big Wall Street comes to their rescue. They shut down the buying. Next thing you know, the guys that are planning to cash out big time are unable to cash out big time. Then the people, now get this, the people are hot. And what do? They're going on Google, giving reviews to the firm that they were trading with, which was Robinhood. And what did they do? They started putting in 100,000 reviews, how this company treated them unfairly. And Google wiped out 100,000 reviews that weren't favorable. You and I don't get that benefit. This is why when we look at it, that the system is skewed. When we talk about populism, here it is, just people coming together to invest, to be on an even keel with those hedge funds. And I'm going to say, I'm not in, they're a necessary part of the investment cycle. But what they've been doing is manipulating the market against the small people, like you and I. And this is why I'm against it. And this is why I'm so frustrated of what happened with the GameStop and shutting down that market. It's not right. It should be investigated. And the people that buy short and then go on television and to torpedo companies with the idea that they are going to have huge profits should face some sort of federal prosecution dealing with the Federal Security Commission to deal with them manipulating the stock. Because this is not fair to you and I. This is what big government's about. This is the problem that I see right now in our country. The fact is that we got high tech, we got Wall Street, we got the folks out in California on Silicon Valley. You've got the alphabets, up there in Seattle. You got Apple. You got all these organizations, Amazon, and they're pulling the plug on small folks like you and I. And it's not right. And we've got to do something about it. And what can we do? I'm frustrated because we have leaders in Washington that are beholden to those people. It's going to have to be grassroots and get involved in politics. My company association I belong to, Associated Builders and Contractors, they say either get into politics or get out of business. Well, I'm telling you right now, if we're going to succeed, you need to get involved in politics. And I'm Mick Rich. Thank you very much.
I think the winning team here tonight will be the last 6A team in the playoffs. It's picked off. Nothing but green in front. Touchdown, Monsanto.
Tight. Hope it warms up a little.
Rolling looking, he's got some daylight in front of him at the 10, the 5. He's going to go into the end zone for the touchdown.
Get extra yards like that. That's Isaac Chavez in motion. Pavia fires down the middle, and it's Rodriguez to the 5, and he's in. Touchdown.
Throwing it in the end zone. Ball is caught. Touchdown, Cowboys. Back to Joseph, look out! And he's gone, forget about it! LaShawn Joseph with a house call! Touchdown, Sandia!
The winner gets to take with them, or in Western's case, keep it here. Zell Price will return, catches it on the goal line. Price has got a little crease, one man to beat. Price might be gone. Price is in the open field and will score on a 98-yard kickoff return. Is Zell Price at Eastern New Mexico 32-yard line. Fowler in the gun, pump fake to Colson. He's got him open. Colson with the move at the 10. He'll go in for the touchdown. 32-yard touchdown pass.
Malik comes out wide to the left this time on 2nd down and 10. They're going to throw it out to him. Up the sideline he goes. Malik is off to the races. Ain't nobody going to catch him. It's 6-0 the Clovis Wildcats. Been a touchdown, but in any event, it's 4th and 10. Rolling, looking, throws it out. Incomplete. Ball will go over on downs with 1:11 to go, and for the first time this year, New Mexico Highlands will be in the victory position, victory kneel down position.
And look at this shot out of a cannon. All the way is Gallegos for his 3rd touchdown tonight. The New Mexico High School Coaches Association, established in 1941, is an organization of New Mexico's best and most professional interscholastic coaches. Coaches across work daily to help our student athletes excel in the classroom, on the field of play, and in our communities. Students that participate in interscholastic activities attain higher grades, higher graduation rates, and higher wages. Responsible for the North-South All-Star Games, statewide Coaches Award Program, and providing multiple professional development opportunities for New Mexico's coaches. Be a great coach by coaching beyond the game.
Welcome back to The Point with Mick Rich. And I want to chat with you a little bit in this session about this COVID crisis. But what I think is just remarkable to me is that it presents an opportunity for all of us to look at how's our government performing. And when I was in college, I've got a civil engineering degree. I had to take calculus. I wasn't good at it. I'm going to be honest with you. I got through it. I got through it. It was a struggle, but I got through it. I have to say, my wife, Marion, and I were in class together, and she did far better than I did. But I got through calculus. But one of the things I learned was that in calculus, they talk about analyzing things, looking at things from 0 to infinity. That's whether you're integrating or differentiating. So the thing to look at here is when I analyze things, I look at them as, how do I look at them as 0 and how do I look at an infinity? And right now, this COVID crisis that we're in is one way to look at our government at infinity. How's it doing for us? And so I want to run through in this segment of infinity. How is our state doing when they're stressed to such a level? And I have to say, obviously I'm bringing this up because it's awful. And when I started running my campaign, they said, Mick, remember to smile. And I said, it's awful news that some of this we got to talk about, but you have to smile. So if I don't smile, it's because it hurts right here, because I know you're hurting. So some of the things that we're all experiencing right now is a lack of transparency from our state. And one of the things that I noticed early on was I had some people telling me that had the inside track that early on, the problem wasn't a statewide COVID crisis. It was only down to about 3 areas. But we locked the state locked the whole state down. We weren't told what's going on. The state failed to inform all of us just how the severity was. Then they fail, and they still fail to tell us how they come up with the COVID deaths. So for our viewers, if you die of a heart attack, but if you have the COVID-19 virus, you're infected with it, then the way they read it is they put that to COVID death. Before COVID, if you had the flu and you died of a heart attack, you died of a heart attack, not the flu. Not now. This makes it extremely difficult for all of us to understand how severe the crisis really is. Is our mortality rate any different than it was before the COVID? Then we have severe limits on our travel in the state. Remember, we locked the state down completely. We locked down Gallup completely. We locked down Gallup, but we didn't lock down the areas that had the high rate of COVID illness, the COVID deaths. Those people would say, well, I can't go to Gallup to go get my groceries. I'll go to Grants, or I'll go up to Farmington, or I'll go to Cortez, Colorado, and they did. This was a mess. And then the other item was we didn't provide services, essential services, to those New Mexicans that were suffering, that were saying, we'd like you to stay in your homes or in your own, small communities. We didn't get the food out to them. So here it is, stay home, but we're not going to give you the food that you need to survive. And then we're talking about severe limits on our businesses. You know, we shut down, I don't know how many businesses. You know, how many businesses are never going to come back? Restaurants limiting to no outdoor, no indoor. You can order and then pick up. I can remember going to a restaurant near where my office is, and I would go with a coworker to have a lunch meeting, and we would go pick up a hamburger and then go sit on the sidewalk around the corner. This is what people were doing, but that restaurant used to be full, and they couldn't even have people outside separating. And then lastly, you know, here we are, we're shutting down education. We're sacrificing the youngest generation for fear. And this is what's going on. What amazes me is we're shutting down our schools, our public schools. While Catholic schools, Christian schools, private schools are remaining open and functioning without infecting and hurting their students, their teachers, their staff. It amazes me that we're shutting down the state, but these other institutions, and then we're not allowing our parents and students to say, well, if the public schools shut down and they're not going to provide services, take your tax dollars over to them. Then severe restrictions on sports. Proview Network, you know, the reason, you know, they have no sports to show people around the state. We've shut down high school sports. I had two daughters that played college sports. One of the ways that they received their college scholarships is they're playing soccer games around the country and in the state. And college coaches saw them and said, we want you on our team. High school students aren't getting those opportunities. And when we talk, those are opportunities that are going to be robbed from them, taken from them. That impact is going to last a lifetime. And then severe restrictions on our churches. And then on top of it all, we have severe financial penalties. It's a mess. And this is what's going on. I just read where a parts store was fined almost $500,000. Unreal to me. These are the things that are killing our state. So what we have is the COVID-19 healthcare crisis has created a crisis in New Mexico. I just want to add too, is I just got notice that the COVID vaccination for myself and my wife is, you know, on hold till they get more vaccine. But is that really the case, or is it a issue of logistics? And again, transparencies, we don't know. All of a sudden, it's like we don't have any. So what we need to do is, I want to talk about this. The COVID healthcare crisis has created a crisis in New Mexico. Our civil rights are easily taken from us. Freedom to assembly, practice religion, a way to make a living. Affordable health care failed when it was needed most. Summed up in 3 words, bend the curve. Why? Because healthcare has failed us. Transfer of wealth from the many to the few, and Jeff Bezos to name one. The elite ruling class is clueless. First they came up and said, you don't wear masks. Then masks are needed. Then double mask, that's even better than one mask. Then finally masks really aren't needed, 2 masks aren't needed. They don't have a clue any more than you and I do. And then our National Guard, instead of getting with logistics, getting the vaccine out to the people, what are they doing? They're in Washington, making sure that the people's voice isn't heard in Washington. This is unreal to me. So how do we navigate our way out of this? I want to make it real clear. First, the legislature needs to end the governor's ability to enact one emergency declaration after another. 2, the New Mexico state government works within the confines of existing law and regulations, Prime example is New Mexico has OSHA, Occupation Safety Health Administration. This is a way they come into my business, they go into other businesses. This is how you keep your staff safe. This is how you keep your staff healthy. This is how you do it with the public. We have an existing organization, and they have fines associated if you don't follow the rules. Do you realize that if a business kills, if by chance staff is killed in the workplace, there isn't a $500,000 penalty? And then New Mexico needs to utilize the best management practice of the states that have healthy citizens and healthy economy. And lastly, New Mexico needs to use the best management practices that Operation Warp Speed utilized that followed the same strategy of World War II, Arsenal for Democracy. And that is a partnership between the military and private enterprise. And for New Mexico, our Brigadier General with the National Guard should be working with private enterprise on logistics to make sure the vaccines get to where it needs to, and we vaccinate New Mexicans in a timely fashion. New Mexico is a large state with a small population. We can lead the nation on how to safely and effectively vaccinate our population. This is one way we can lead the nation in a great way. The goal should always be to have a healthy citizenship and a healthy economy in our state. This is one way we can lead the country. Our problems, as I said before, are all solvable. We just need leaders that are willing to solve it. When we look what's going on in the roundhouse right now, I don't see this happening. I don't see the National Guard, our governor, stepping up and leading our state. It's frustrating to me. This past week, I just notified 2 friends are leaving the state. I just went over and saw my buddy. He's got a 150-person business, and he said, Mick, I've had enough. Last year was brutal, what I went through, dealing with 150 people, all the regulations that are happening. I'm done, I'm retiring, I'm gonna hand it off to the next generation. I wish him well. Tell you what we need to do is when we hand it off to the next generation, we need to have a strong, thriving economy for not just the next generation of business leaders, but the next generation of staff. I'm Mick Rich, and this is To the Point.
Middle of the field in some room, a move at the 20 and all the way. Touchdown.
Cleveland tonight sputtered at times, but when they got it going, just like right there. To the 5, touchdown Cleveland. Down and 10 here. Play action, looking, throws it out deep, has a man out there, ball is caught. To the 10, to the house, and just like that, the Cleveland Storm answer.
Away. Johnson, and now it's sent back post, and that is dangerous. It's by everyone, and then it's headed in. And so a misclearance.
They're going to give it. There goes Thompson trying to turn the corner and does. Thompson at the 15, 10, 5. Waiting for the call. Touchdown, Mayfield Trojans.
Robertson will push it to Hobart on the far side. Tipped over the double block. Pancaked off the floor beautifully by Gonzalez Sanchez, and we're still going. Here's Hobart. She'll go over the double block. Lucero Jones will send it. Tough set. Lucero has to get it over. Robertson. She'll push it over the block. Save. The left-handed save there by Lucero. Here's Jones. She'll have a swing. Yes. McIntosh. Excuse me, at the front.
Stepping up in the pocket and moving, and now to the 5 and diving towards the end zone and in.
Hobart. Jones. She'll set Mack for the championship. Yes! 5 in a row. La Cueva is the city's best yet again.
Maybe not getting the reps he needed at quarterback. He wide open guy.
There's a big move by Rodriguez. Look out as he's down the sideline. A
Trouble.
cut, shot out of a cannon. Ivan Rodriguez, he's got all the speed. Can he break away inside the 10 to
And
the
he's gonna
5
make it.
and in? Touchdown.
Don't sacrifice quality of flavor when you're in a hurry. Golden Pride offers ribs, fried chicken, green and red chili breakfast burritos, and Frontier Cinnabons. 4 great locations, or visit us online at goldenpride@abq.com. Golden Pride Barbecue Chicken and Ribs, proud supporter of Proview Sports Network.
Welcome back to The Point with Mick Rich. I'm here with my good buddy, Carol Wright, with the New Mexico Restaurant Association. Carol, great to have you back.
Thank you so much. Wonderful to be here.
So, Carol, I want to talk a little bit about restaurants and what goes on. But one of the things that contractors probably spend a quarter of our time meeting with our friends, business associates in restaurants. And we're not able to do that. And it's frustrating to me to have that going on. And so...
Well, I will tell you, there's some good news on that front. And the good news is that once we can get back into restaurants again, those meetings will be 100% deductible. So that's one of the things that came out in the relief bill was that we get 100% deductibility on those meals. And again, we're not open, and you know, restaurants are suffering right now. But when we're open again, I think that's going to really help bring some economic generation into restaurants.
So so for our viewers, I don't think they get a picture of just how dire things are for you want to share with our viewers just some of the numbers, the stats of what your members are going through.
So last year in about April, we did a survey with the National Restaurant Association. And the numbers that came out then were that 6% of restaurants would be gone by the end of the year. And we have 3,500 restaurants. 6% of that is 210 restaurants. We now have a list of 204 restaurants that have gone out of business.
Permanently
So
gone out of business.
the unfortunate thing about that is that we were right. And we've done a more recent survey in November that 52% of restaurants said that they didn't believe they would be here in 6 months. And that is more than half of the restaurants said they're not going to have a chance to survive through this. And so to me, I hope that's wrong. And I know many restaurants that have decided to close down temporarily and wait this out and hope that they have the money to reopen. But it's a dire situation right now.
One of the biggest reasons for business failures is lack of capital. Yeah. So when your business is shut down or the volume is necked down so low that you're not even to cover your expenses, so you're chewing up your capital, And so when it finally opens up, you're not able to have the cash available to meet payroll till things come in, to buy the food, all what a restaurant needs to then go say, we're open for business.
Right, right. Well, and so remember, we've been open and closed and open and closed. And right now, for all intents and purposes, 25% outdoor dining in the middle of winter is closed. We can do takeout and delivery. And I've got to say, there are some business models that are restaurant business models that are doing fine. Those people with takeout windows,
Right.
drive-through windows, they're doing pretty well right now. Maybe they're down a little bit, but they're not down
Right.
like the sit-down restaurants are the ones that are really hurting right now. And it's difficult with the open and close. And remember, we got the PPP last year, but that was an 8-week fix for a 9-month problem.
That's right.
And we've got PPP again, but for New Mexico restaurants, unless we can open, it's going to be difficult for them to use that money to reopen again, right?
I know that from a personal level. We had our PP money, and that was used just to keep things going and to keep people going in that. And now the next PP, we're saying, we're going to get this money. Where's the work?
Right.
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 And I mean, I'm looking at this, and if I'm struggling, I hate to say this, Carol, and I don't mean it. I've got a couple buddies in the restaurant business, and I say, all I can say is when I talk to you,
You feel
Jeff,
better about
I know,
your
I know. Thank God I don't own a restaurant.
Well,
Because,
and there was a lot of people in the construction industry with the last downturn. I mean, I think the construction
Right.
industry really got hit, and restaurants didn't so much in that downturn. And so a lot of construction folks looked at our industry and said, "I'm going to get in that industry," and now they're regretting that move.
Okay. Yeah. It's funny that you say that. Is that I belong to a national contractor group. Construction Leadership Network. And one of the funny things that we would talk about was broke contractors going to the restaurant business because they spend so much time in restaurants. And so, we go, oh my gosh, there's a harder business in construction as restaurants.
That's absolutely true. Yeah. Well, and the problem with us, right, with this open and closed situation is that everything that we do is perishable. So we bring in raw product and manufacture that and then sell it on the same premise. And so if the governor opens you up, you can't just bring in product immediately and have it ready. You got to bring back your employees, you got to bring the product in, then you've got to manufacture that and it's a slow process. And then if you shut down in 2 weeks, you've got a bunch of raw product that is, it's refrigerated, but unless you can freeze it, it's perishable. And so now you've got to give it away or do something else with it. So it's a really precarious situation for restaurants right now.
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah.
So here we are, we're sitting today, we're talking about how things are tough. So what are restaurants doing? Let's say, for instance, and one of the things that amazes me is I look at, and I've mentioned this in a previous segment, is we want a healthy, we want our citizens to be healthy, and we want a healthy economy. So what are and look at other states, and I say, look at other states. What are other states doing to keep their patrons, their citizens safe while keeping their economy open? What are other states doing?
Well, here's the thing that's never been proven, is that restaurants are a danger. New York State has their contact tracing data says that 74% of folks who have contacted COVID, it has come from private social gatherings. And only 1.43% have gotten it in restaurants. So it's really those places where people are going. They're homes, private social gatherings, where people feel comfortable. They take off their mask. They They don't stay 6 feet apart because they're talking to each other, and they contact the virus. Now, in a restaurant, it's a totally controlled, regulated environment where we are layering in the COVID-safe practices, 6-foot distancing, lots of cleaning and sanitizing. You're much safer in a restaurant environment than you are going to other to social environments. And that's what they're doing in Texas, that's what they're doing in Arizona. And Arizona's rates, I have to say, have skyrocketed. But I have a daughter that works in a hotel in Arizona, and she said, although the hotel is taking the precautions, there's a lot of folks coming over from Los Angeles and California that have high infection rates, and then they infect people in Arizona. Right. And so, who's doing it right? I don't think New Mexico is, because we are the most locked down state in the nation, and still we've had spikes and incredible, spread in New Mexico.
I agree with you 100%. I look at, it's like my business. I look at my business and I say, what am I doing? Then I look at my competitors and then I say, what are they doing? What are they doing right? What aren't they doing right? What do I want to duplicate? And what do I want to make sure to stay away from? The state of New Mexico is looking at New York or New York City and shutting everything down, and that's not the...
Well, and we're a state with much, sparser population densities. And so there is no one right answer, and that's what kind of frustrates me, is that we're talking about data and science, but how could the Colorado governor have different data and science than the New Mexico governor, than the Oregon governor? So, there's some huge inconsistencies.
Well, I see that. So first of all, what are the steps? Let's say restaurants open tomorrow.
Let's pretend.
We're going to pretend.
We're
going to pretend, but we open tomorrow.
Yeah.
What steps are restaurants taking?
Well, again, the cleaning and sanitizing, which is something we've always done.
Right.
We actually, the state of New Mexico has some very heavy regulations on restaurants and making sure that we're all prepared. So we have to have food handler licenses, which means everybody in the restaurant has to know how to handle food safely. So, rest assured your food is being handled safely. And then on top of that, we've all gone through the SAFE certification that the governor, required us to go through in order to stay open, and then she shut us down right after that.
So one of the items that I mentioned before was, instead of all these additional emergency mandates, if we just use the systems that we have in place, which is I consider OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, also for public health for restaurants, you work within those guidelines and then add on top of it just the extra about social distancing, we're in good shape. Is that the way you kind of see it?
Well, that is the way we see it. And again, if we find that there's something that is proven by data, and here's the thing, do barriers work? We don't know, but let's find that out. Let's use some of the state's resources and find out if barriers work, because if that's the case, we can put plexiglass up between tables. We can do a lot of things. Do alterations to your HVAC work? Does UV light work? And there is proof that all of these things work. And then let's get the state on board and get the state giving some grants for those things.
So Carol, we need to wrap this segment up. I appreciate you coming in, sharing with us. I'm looking forward to getting back to my favorite restaurant and sitting down with my buddies and have a great meal.
100% deductible.
Thank you very much.
Ramos, rise and fire. He's fouled.
You know, he used to coach for Del Norte. And
Here's Voss all the way with the finish. He'll get the... Behind the back of the dribble. Tries to go up with the right hand. He changed hands in midair. And Hotnet sent it away. Wynn doing a really good job denying Chavez. DC hasn't got the ball. Oh, Yeku. Oh. Working against Watson. Oh, look at the spin move.
Ball's loose. DJ Bustos brings it up. Barnes Tompkins, alley-oop. How about it? That was redunculous.
Turnover. Cable to the big fella might try to jam one home.
Welcome back to The Point with Mick Rich. I'm again here with my good buddy, Carol Wright with the New Mexico Restaurant Association. Carol, how you doing?
Good, very good.
So this segment, we want to talk about how do we take our state from the bottom 10 to the top 10 and do it in 10 years, especially starting in 2021. I think it's huge. What I see happening in the Roundhouse, what the government is doing, is that they are enacting legislation that makes no difference on those categories that lifts our state up. And so people that come in the program, I ask them, what are your thoughts? How do we get our state from the bottom 10 to the top 10?
Well, it's interesting, and I think you probably know this. What gets measured gets done.
Right.
And so we need to start measuring those things. And not that we don't, you know, I mean, right now we've got the measuring stick and it's, we're number 50 of everything. And so
Right.
let's start there, but then let's say, okay, let's try this. If it works, it will bring us up. You know, I mean, I spent years as my kids were young working on the education system in New Mexico. There were some things that were working, you know, the quality, Pinion, all of that quality effort in schools was working, and then we moved away from that. You know, and I've got to say, in the education system, we give teachers and we give schools so many things that they have to do. I think it would be terribly overwhelming to be in the school system here in New Mexico. And that's the same kind of thing we're doing to our business community. You know, we just pile regulation upon regulation. Well, that's not working, so let's do another regulation. Well, that's not working, so let's do another one.
So what's interesting when you bring that up, I had an employee came to work for us. He was a superintendent. We provide health care benefits and time off, sick leave, family leave, whatever we want to call it today.
Mm-hmm.
And well, he within a couple months, he had a major illness. He was off for weeks, but he hadn't accrued any time. And I said, he's on board with us. We're going to meet. It's an obligation. Granted, he hasn't accrued the time, but we have an obligation to provide that benefit. That benefit.
Right.
And well, 6 months later, he left. and obviously he got more benefit than what he put in, time wise. And my team said, well, we ought to redo our rules so that doesn't happen.
Right.
And I said, I've been in business for 25 years. I'm not changing my rules for one guy in 25 years, but I see the state doing the same thing. We have one issue, we're going to enact rules over everybody.
Right.
That's what you're talking about.
Absolutely. Well, and I think in construction, and I'll just use restaurant construction as an example. I know there's a restaurant group in New Mexico, and they've been in New Mexico their whole growing up.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden they're building in Texas and Oklahoma and other places,
Right.
and they are blown away by how much easier it is to get a building from start to finish in another state compared to New Mexico.
Oh, I believe I know the restaurant you're talking about. I hear that with businesses coming here to build.
Yes.
They're
They're absolutely horrified at how difficult it is to put a building in New Mexico. And that's one of those things, so this wasn't working, so we're going to layer on another, bureaucratic layer because one person was taking advantage of something. And so then we've got all of this bureaucracy laid on top, which it just makes it difficult to do business.
We did a project one time to tie in with this and the equipment manufacturer was responsible for the design and overseeing the construction. We worked for them. Mm-hmm. Well, they didn't have a contractor's license. They couldn't get a gross receipts tax, certificate.
Right.
And I think they probably spent more money in attorney's fees working through the state of New Mexico than gross receipts tax was ever worth.
Sure.
And it was why they came here. There was we were working for an international company. And that company, and then the ultimate client was an international company. And they're looking at New Mexico. And we're saying, hey, leave California, come here. And they're saying, you guys are worse than California.
Yeah.
So we're talking about decreasing regulations for education, decreasing regulations for education for business. And what we're talking about is not just getting rid of regulation, it's getting rid of those burdensome regulations that doesn't add to anything.
Right. There's no value add to the regulations. And, and I'm the first to say we need the regulations that we need, but let's relook at some of the things some of the hoops that we're making people jump through and see if it's really, really critical. And it comes to mind just with COVID, and building patios for restaurants. Some cities were just right out there and saying, if you need street space, we'll give you street space. If you need, parking places in front of your building, we'll give you those parking places and you can just build a patio on it. But then there's some cities that said that, and then they said, but here's all the regulations you have to get through in order to do this. And so,
I've been there, I've seen that, and it's that, we're excited, we're going to do all the things, and then it's the buts.
Exactly. Well, you can't do that because you have to follow this, the regulation and licensing department, which is the liquor license. You have to have 4-foot fences, right? Because you don't want somebody to be able to hand a drink over a fence.
Right.
How often does that happen?
That's right.
Is that really something we need to worry about?
So we've talked about business, we've talked about education. The other categories that people talk about is crime, the environment. Let's see what else. There's a few others out there.
Well, crime is huge, and I know a restaurateur who is actually in this part of town, and she has stories that would just give you chills. One of her stories was she has a warehouse down here, and they couldn't figure out how people were getting in and stealing from them. They finally found it was a group of kids, like 9 and 10-year-olds, crawling under a fence with their wagons and stealing from them. And it was a lot. They weren't just stealing fun things, you know, they were stealing like major things. It was a crime syndicate, basically. So, you know, I mean.
They were using kids. The adults were using the kids to steal.
To get in and steal. And then, you know, and then there's the homeless problem, which is a huge problem that we need to fix. But, you know, when we've got homeless folks going into restaurants and locking themselves in the bathrooms and, you know, doing whatever they do in there, drugs or other things, and then we're making the restaurant managers and employees responsible to deal with those folks. It's a scary situation.
One of the things I mentioned in the past was that right now in education, I believe we have industrialized education like we do factories and manufacturing facilities. Bigger and bigger facilities, more efficiency, more standards, and all of that. We're doing the same thing with homeless. We are now to the point of industrializing homelessness. We're building we want to build bigger and bigger homeless shelters. We're going to industrialize it. We're going to make it more efficient. We're going to take the human connection out of it, dehumanize it, dehumanize the homeless people instead of dealing with the homeless people.
Yeah.
We've got to get the people. I drive down sections of Albuquerque and it reminds me of pictures I see of Calcutta. They don't call it Calcutta anymore, do they?
I don't even know.
I don't think they do.
I have a friend, though. She just moved from Albuquerque, and she lives in Washington, D.C. And she actually took a picture of the first homeless person she saw, and it was, I think, 3 months into her new life that she saw her first homeless person.
Where's this at?
In Washington, D.C.
Oh, I've been in Washington. I walked around a lot in D.C.
Yeah.
There was a lot of areas with homeless out of the, you know, some of the mainstream. But homeless is a huge problem there. But for a city our size,
it's everywhere. I mean, it's on every street corner, you know, honestly, because everybody's standing there, right, with a sign on every street corner. And you know, I mean, we've got to do something about that. We've got to figure that out. But the other thing we've got to do is we've got to get our economy back because we're making homeless people right now. I mean, our industry, 25 to 30,000 people are still unemployed. I told you about 200 restaurants that had closed down. That's 5,000 employees that don't have a place to go back to because they're shut down.
You know what? I didn't think about that, but you're right.
It's permanent.
But we need a booming economy to allow people to have they can see, if I get out of homelessness, I can end up getting a job, having my own place, and do those things. I have yet to find any person that says, I enjoy.
Well, you go back,
I mean,
go backwards from there because again, you know, we've got these 30,000 people that can't pay their bills.
Right.
You know, they're on unemployment, but that's not enough to get them through. Right. And so they can't pay their mortgage or they can't pay their rent, and that puts them out of a home, they become homeless. And that scares me. That really terrifies me.
We need to build the economy. Carol, great having you here today. Man, a good conversation. Always good seeing you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.